I was very different. I was very stubborn growing up. I really was very strong-willed. My parents struggled a lot more with me. I pushed back a lot. My brother had this tremendous natural faith, and I was much more the doubting Thomas. I didn't really take anything at face value. I questioned everything always, and I really just gave my parents a lot of pushback. I really grew up in a wonderful environment. All the conditions were essentially perfect. I had wonderful parents. They really brought us up and raised us up on this idea of having that relationship with Christ. I would go to church every Sunday, and we'd sit in church as a family, and I would think, kind of make a mental note of the time, and as it got later and later in the sermon, I would kind of harden myself a little bit. I'd sit up a little straighter, and I would actively harden my heart, and I would actively resist that moment, and I would actively say, nope, not me, not today, I am not doing it, I am not raising my hand, I'm not standing up, you're not going to get me, not today. And it really just was a routine for me, essentially, on Sunday mornings. And then I remember our church was growing, and we had this really cool thing that they did where after they poured the foundation for the church and they put the walls up for the church, they let everybody come in, and you could sign a Bible verse and sign your name on the foundation, on the new foundation that they had poured on the church building. It was a fun environment, and my dad was taking pictures, and he said, hey, Kayla, why don't you come stand by my verse and let me get a picture of you with my verse? And I said, okay. And we took the picture and kind of went on our way, and it was just a cool memory, a cool day in the growth of our church. And sometime later, I had a friend, and she invited me to go to a church camp with her, and we went to this Word of Life camp with my friend. It was the last night of camp, and I finally just released, and I finally just left my heart open. I didn't actively resist. I didn't harden myself, and I let him come in, and I made that decision to make it personal, and I took that step. And it was a great moment for me, and I remember wanting to call home and tell my parents, and of course it was very emotional for them. They were very excited, and I remember getting home from camp and everyone was all excited and emotional. And so I remember after things kind of settled down a little bit, my father coming to me one day, and I remember him asking me, do you remember that day that the church opened up the doors and we could go in and we could sign a verse on the subfloor? And I said, yeah, I remember that. And he said, do you remember me asking to take a picture of you with my verse and where I wrote it? And I said, yeah, I remember that. And he said, well, do you remember what the verse was? And I said, no, I don't remember. And I said, in all honesty, I'm not even really sure I read it that day, and I certainly don't remember it now. And he said, well, it was Matthew 28. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he said, I took that picture and I put that picture in my Bible. And he said, and I pray over that every day. And he said, the whole reason I did that was to pray and hope and have faith that one day you would be baptized. On that day, before we all got to the church, I did some research, and I found out exactly where they were going to put the new baptismal in the new church building. And he said, I wrote that verse about baptism for you right on the subfloor, right beneath where they were going to put the new baptism. And I was just like, wow, that's really amazing. And he said, no, that's not even it. He said, do you realize that day that I called Pastor Don, and I called him and I said, Kayla finally accepted Christ, and she did it at camp, and she's coming home and she wants to be baptized. And he said, well, Gary, we just opened our church a few weeks ago, and he said, what's so amazing is he said, Kayla's going to be the very first person baptized in that new baptismal. And it's just amazing how God works sometimes that, he wrote it right there on that new foundation in the church. And, a year later when the church finally opens, I somehow have this moment where I just release and open my heart to him. And, God moved in such a way that I ended up being the very first person baptized, right above where my father wrote that verse and right above where that picture was taken. I think that's really the story, is the backstory. And to see all those moments and all my parents' faith and hope and prayers rewarded. And whenever I have doubts or whenever I wonder, God, are you listening? Are you even hearing us? These prayers just bouncing off the ceiling. I can just look back on my story and really on my parents' story and know that he is there and that he does listen, and knowing the backstory now, and as I get older, still knowing the backstory is just tremendously powerful and something that I'll probably never forget. My name is Kayla McKenzie, and this is my story.